Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting over episode 10 of Neon Genesis Evangelion. If you'd like to watch along, start watching now. So, Asuka's had the opportunity to meet up with Kaji again, and she's immediately hanging off his arm and his every word. She's going shopping for a swimsuit, so I'd imagine this is sort of like an infantile attempt to seduce him. Apparently she's getting a swimsuit in preparation for a school trip to Okinawa. So Kaji's showing his age a little bit by saying that he didn't have a school trip because of the second impact occurring. Unfortunately for Asuka, Misato is informing her that she can't go on the trip because she has to be on standby for angels. Asuka immediately tries to drag Shinji into the argument, but he's not having it. So Asuka is, a little upset, to put it mildly, but she raises a good point about saying, why do we always have to wait for the angels? Why can't we seek out them and destroy them in advance? So she raises a good point, but it's probably impractical. So Misato intimates that Shinji and Asuka don't have very good grades, so while everybody else is on the school trip, they might as well use this impromptu vacation to catch up on their studies. None of their classmates are very sympathetic to their plight, unfortunately, but there's not really a whole lot they could do either. So understandably, Rei is also on standby. Shinji is sort of obeying what Misato is talking about. He's studying up on physics. Meanwhile, Asuka is not complying, and she's gonna put on her swimsuit and go swimming. She's also quick to display her intelligence and solve a physics question that Shinji was struggling with. So, as it turns out, Shinji's actually struggling with the material. Asuka is struggling with the language barrier. She apparently already has a degree from college, but she can't read the kanji. She also refers to thermal expansion as kids' stuff. I mean, the basic principles of thermal expansion are pretty simple. Things generally expand when they warm up and contract when they cool down. But there are some very interesting exotic materials that don't behave like that. And it's not always a linear relationship when things expand and contract due to heat. And there are a lot of circumstances where you have to really be careful with thermal expansions because they can cause all kinds of problems if we're dealing with things like structures or things that need to be airtight, for example. If they're in a situation where it's really cold and they could contract, if they were to open up a gap, that might be really bad. So apparently something's going on at a volcano. The Magic computers, the supercomputers that NERV uses, are 50-50 about whether or not this might actually be something. But there's some sort of a shadow in the images taken within a volcano. In fact, whatever this thing is, it's so deep within the volcano that the probe they're sending is suffering under, I guess, the heat and pressure of being submerged in so much magma. I'd imagine that magma induces a far greater amount of pressure than just normal water. Of course, at this point, they did manage to find what they want. It's an angel, and it appears to be currently dormant. Now, interestingly enough, that brief image we got of the angel, first of all, immediately classified as top secret, but it looks very similar to that thing Gendo referred to as Adam in the briefcase that Kaji brought him. So, the plot really begins to thicken here. So now we cut to Gendo consulting with, I guess, other powers that be. So they found this dormant angel. Gendo wants to go on the offensive. The other people are hesitant. And one of them brought up, don't you remember what happened 15 years ago? Now, we know what happened 15 years ago was the second impact. So the implication here is that if you muck around with this thing, it could very well be an apocalyptic event if things go wrong. So, notably, the mission is to capture it in its current dormant form. Failing that, they should just destroy it. But the goal is to capture it. So Asuka's gonna be the one heading up the mission. Unit 1 is presumably going to be support. And Unit 0 is just on standby at the base because the I guess the thermal shielding isn't yet standardized for Unit 0. So Asuka is upset about the thermal insulation installed on Unit 2. To the point where she's almost unwilling to work altogether. She thinks it looks ugly, therefore she's not going to do it. Even Kaji trying to coax her into doing it isn't quite working. So notably, whether this was intended or an unintentional consequence, Rei offers to pilot Unit 2, and only because of that does Asuka step up and say she'll do it. So clearly her pride is still bruised from the incident in the last episode. So meanwhile, Kaji's taking a cable car and he's speaking somewhat cryptically with a hitherto unknown person. So things become a little bit more tenuous when it's revealed that the Air Force is on standby to scour everything with N2 mines if things go wrong. I guess they're banking on the chance that an N2 mine will be enough to destroy an embryonic angel. Of course, what they're not concerned about is whether or not the pilot in the Evangelion will also be destroyed in the blast. Notably. Even more notable is that it was Gendo himself who ordered this. So Unit 2 is now submerging into the magma. So they're really going down a pretty deep into the magma. So they're presumably exceeding 1,000 meters in depth, and they still haven't reached the angel. Interestingly, Asuka's not able to clap eyes on the angel. Ritsuko's chalking that up to the magma currents moving it around, but that might not be the case. There's no guarantee that the angel was just remaining dormant. So they've already exceeded the maximum safe depth. But Misato says, keep going until we find the angel. That strikes me as remarkably bad leadership because you're violating safety standards. And technically, This equipment should be rated for much greater pressures due to being designed with a margin of safety, but it appears that there are already cracks and structural integrity issues forming here. Of course, Asuka's no help either. She wants to keep going because her pride demands it. So now that Asuka's nearly 2 kilometers down, it seems she's finally found the angel. Due to the convection currents, Asuka really only has one chance to get this right, otherwise, presumably things go wrong. Fortunately, she does manage to wrangle the angel with no problem so far. So far the operation's going pretty well. They just have to retract her out of the volcano. So before they can retract Asuka fully, it seems like the angel is starting to wake up from its dormancy, starting to hatch, so to speak. It's already bursting from the cage that was containing it, which is notable because the cage was some sort of high-tech electromagnetic field device. So the problem now emerges that Asuka doesn't have great mobility in this magma, whereas the angel does. She's in a very hostile environment. She can't access the progressive knife that she would otherwise use for melee combat. So Unit 1's dropping its progressive knife for Asuka to use. But there's no guarantee that having it will really help her. So the Angel's closed in on Unit 2, and it's immediately latching onto it. It almost seems like it's trying to chew through the insulation. It looks like it managed to tear off one of Unit 2's legs. Unfortunately, it seems that the unusual environment of the volcano has made the angel resistant to the progressive knife. So Asuka and Shinji are sort of using their knowledge of thermal expansion to try and cool it down so they can cut it effectively. And at this point, it seems marginally effective at best. I take that back. The angel does disintegrate, but in the process, it tears most of the lines that were leading towards Unit 2, thus cutting off its coolant, and indeed attaching it so it can't be pulled up. Of course, before anything gets really bad, Unit 1, with Shinji as the pilot, dove in to rescue Asuka. Now, I'm not sure quite how that's possible if Unit 2 needed special thermal insulation to dive in the lava, whereas Unit 1 didn't, or if Shinji was just being monumentally reckless. Now, interestingly enough, while everybody's here at the hot springs, Misato alludes to a scar she has that she got during the second impact. So, interestingly enough, we're learning that she was there and present at the second impact, which I don't think was something we knew before. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means tune in for the next one.